Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. We got another awesome car to work on today. Fresh off the tow truck, 2007 Scion TC. Doesn't crank, doesn't start. The battery was completely dead when it got here. So I just pulled it in, put a battery charger on it, that way it'd be all ready to go for us when we started filming. But all I really know about it, it doesn't crank, it doesn't start. That's pretty much it. Let's get inside the car and check that out. So here she is in all her glory, 07 Scion. I'm just gonna put the key in the ignition here. Turn the key on, we got some nice flashy lights going on. I've got it in the crank position now. Nothing happening at all. Come back off. I'm gonna do that again a few times, let you guys listen. So, trying to crank it, nothing happens at all. So immediately we have some prime suspects. We could have a starter relay control circuit issue. We could have a bad starter. Most likely we don't have a battery issue, for one, because I just charged it up, and for two, as I hold this in the crank position, none of these lights are going out or dimming or anything like that. So yeah, let's get a diagram of this starting circuit, figure out where everything lives, and we'll probably start at the starter relay and start doing some checks there. So let's take a looky-loo at the diagram next. So I've just got an OEM diagram here, and as far as starting systems go, man, this thing is pretty simple. We'll start here at the relay. We see it's a 4-pin relay, no big deal there. As far as its load sides, we see this terminal comes out, goes down to the starter itself. That is for the solenoid. Follow that back up, it comes directly off of the ignition switch, this AM2. Kind of following that back up, it goes to a 30 amp heavy fuse and then pretty much directly to the battery. Do a fusible link after that. So real simple on the load side. As far as the feed side for this goes, this vehicle has an automatic transmission, so I've just kind of highlighted the path that it's going to follow here. If we follow this bottom leg down here, it goes straight to ground through a junction connector. So real simple. Can you guys see that? Yep, there you go. Straight to ground on this control terminal here. If we follow the other terminal up, it comes up and it goes through the park neutral switch, keeps going through a 7.5 amp starter fuse. That fuse is going to receive power from the ignition switch on AM1, ST1 terminal out. Following that through the ignition switch, that's going to come from this 25 amp AM1 fuse, and that goes again back to the heavy fuse all the way back to the battery. So real simple starting circuit. Definitely going to be pretty easy to troubleshoot here. Let's start at the relay first, just because that's going to be a nice easy test location. It's in the fuse box, the left front of the engine compartment, and let's start doing some checks there. All right, so the area we're going to be focused on is here. You can kind of see it behind the battery. I'm just going to get this battery charger off of this thing. This battery is plenty charged enough as it is. Just get this out of here so we have more room to work. There we go. So I'm just going to pop this cover off here. And I'm just taking a look at this. All the numbers are pretty small on here. I'm just looking for the starter relay, and it looks like this one right here. I realize you guys can't see it. So I'm going to attempt to reposition you guys so you guys can see this relay a little bit better. All right, so as far as shots go, I think this is pretty darn good. You guys are right into the middle of the situation here. If we look at this purple relay, that's going to be the starter relay. I'm just going to pull this thing out of here. So my focus with this is I'm trying to do this quickly. I want to know what's going on with this vehicle pretty fast. I'm working after work on this customer's car. So I'm just pulling this out of here. Just briefly taking a look back at our diagram. Want to see two power feeds here, one load side feed through the ignition switch, the other control side feed through the park neutral switch. And both of those are really only going to be active in the start position. So the tool I'm going to use, one of my favorites for doing stuff like this, just a test light. You guys know how I roll. So I've got that going to ground. I'm just going to choose a fuse to test that on. Something that's hot, obviously. Trying to remember if I have the key on. It's highly likely that I don't. There we go. So as we see, test light's lighting. So I'm just kind of looking down into these cavities. We see these two right here. Those are going to be our load sides. These two that are mounted perpendicularly to the ones off to you guys' left. These are going to be the control sides of this. So we're going to do the control side first. Really what I want to see is I want to see control side power on one of these. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to gently lay this test light in here like this. That should work. That's not really stuffed in there. But I'm just going to try and crank the car. I'm going to keep an eye on that test light while I do that. Trying to get my hand in here where I can still see that. So that's in the crank position. That's back off. That's in the crank position. That's back off. Definitely don't see a change. So we're just going to hop this over to the next terminal here. Again, not stuffing this in here, just kind of gently resting it in that terminal. I'm going to try and crank it again here. Nothing. This is crank. This is out of crank. That's the crank position. So nothing on this light, so pretty much what that tells us is we have a control side problem. We're missing this control side feed. We could check the load side real quick. We'll just jet over to these two terminals here. So I'm just trying to gently rest this test light. Not sure which one of these terminals is our guy. So I've got the test light in there. I'm going to move this to crank again. That's the crank position. That's back off. Crank position, back off. So nothing on that one. Let's switch over to our other terminal here, our other load side terminal. I expect this one to light if our load side circuitry is good. Just trying to get that rested in there. That should work. So that's crank, that's back off, that's crank, that's back off. So, you know, kind of what that tells us is our load side feed is good. We definitely have a control side problem, you know, dealing with these two terminals over here. Two parts to this whole mess. You know, we have control side feed coming through the park neutral switch, through the ignition switch to this. We also have control side ground, which is a ground all the time. So to check the ground, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch both of these terminals here. I want one of them to light, ideally. Obviously, I switch my test light over to battery positive. So when I find the ground, it's going to light. It's kind of touching the body of the car. So testing this one, I got nothing. Testing this one, it lights. So what that tells us is this terminal here, that's going to be the one that's actually coming through the park neutral switch, through the ignition switch, through the park neutral switch. Let me show you this diagram one more time just to make that pretty clear. So again, we're dealing with this relay. This one off to the left, that's the load side circuitry. We can see the switch there. Our control side's off to the right. I just knocked that relay on the ground. Great. But so power for the control side comes through this park neutral switch here. Then it comes through this start ST fuse. So we could do a couple of different things to kind of isolate this circuit down. You know, we could have an ignition switch issue. This ST fuse could be blown. We could have a park neutral switch issue. You know, we just don't know yet. So one easy thing we could do is we could keep our test light right here where it is. You know, we know that's the control side terminal. And I can just hop in the car and I can move this to maybe neutral and, you know, see if we can get our test light to light that way. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. Just hopping back in here. You guys can still hear me. So currently in park, just watching that test light. That's the crank position, that's off. That's the crank position, that's off. Nothing lighting on the light, so I'm just going to move this selector lever down into the neutral position. And this thing has some sort of brake switch issue too. I'm not sure what's going on with that. We may film that, but you actually have to depress the interlock. But anyways, we're in neutral now, so I'm going to try that. So even in the neutral position, absolutely nothing. Our test light's not lighting. So definitely not fruitful there. So we're kind of not suspecting a park neutral problem, you know, kind of based off that test. You know, we could come back to that. You know, the next place we could do is we could do the ST fuse. That's also in this location. So I'm just looking at this box here. And I'm looking for this ST fuse that's coming from the ignition switch, in between the ignition switch and the park neutral position switch. So I'm just kind of eyeballing this box and seeing if I can see it on here. Ah, there it is right there. It's right beside our starter relay. So it appears that it's going to be this one right here. So what I can do is I can just attempt to rest my test light on that terminal. I hope I'm making good contact. So I just got the test light resting there. This thing's back in park. I'm just going to try and crank it. So that's crank, that's off, that's crank, that's off. No change there at all, absolutely none. So one thing we got to think about is, what if this fuse is blown? So I'm just going to move this over to this other terminal, and we're going to test that side now. Testing like this can sometimes be a little hard to do by yourself. What would be ideal is someone in the vehicle cranking this for me, but I'm here by myself, so we just kind of got to make it work. So I think I'm on that pretty well. So I'm just going to move back to the crank position. Did my test light fall off? No, I don't think so. So that's crank, that's off, that's crank, that's off. A little bit unsure of my connection. You know what? I might just pull this fuse out just to be sure about my measurements. Let me see. Where's a good pair of pliers when you need them? Oh, that's right. They're in my toolbox. So I'm just going to yank this fuse out of here. We're just going to eyeball that. Let's see if I can get it to where you guys can see it. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's definitely not blown. That element is still intact. So now that we got that out of there, just so I can be sure about these measurements, just because I am by myself, I'm just gently laying my test light back in there. So I'm just going to redo that test just to make sure. That's crank, that's off, that's crank, that's off. Let's move it over one more terminal to this one right here. There we go. That's crank, that's off, that's crank, and that's off. So, definitely looks like our issue here is pointing towards this ignition switch for sure, without a doubt. I kind of don't want to pull the knee bolster out and get to that yet. So one thing we could do is this bottom one here, this AM2, that's going to be for the load side of the starter relay. We're not worried about that one. We already tested that guy. The one we're worried about is this control circuitry here. It comes up through the 7.5 amp starter fuse on this ST1 starter terminal of the ignition switch. And if we follow that over, it has this 25 amp AM1 fuse there. I think a good place to start would be to maybe check that fuse. I think that'd be real easy. And I believe that it's out here. So let me see, we'll just zoom back in on this fuse box here. Fuse I'm looking for, AM1. It's gonna be a big guy, big old fuse. Where's AM2 there? Where's AM1 at? Where is it? Oh, just looking through this. AM2 is definitely right there. Am I skimming over it in my haste? You guys probably already see it and you're laughing. You're saying, what's this guy's problem? Man, I don't see it. It might not be out here. Let me see. So one thing I did do, just kind of in preparation for this, is this is an OE diagram we're looking at here. What I also have printed out is a diagram off of Identifix. This is basically what they do with these. They just kind of redo them and make them a little bit easier to view. So taking a look at this, we can basically just reanalyze this. Following this control side up through the park neutral switch, ST fuse, engine room, through the ignition switch, coming over the white wire, AM1 fuse. Yeah, check it out right there. It's in the dash. So let's go check that fuse inside the dash before we go ripping off the knee bolster and stuff like that. I definitely think that's going to be the easiest thing to do. So let me look inside the car, figure out where this internal fuse box is, and we'll give it a quick probe with the old test light, see if that fuse is blowing or not. If it's not, and if we have voltage there, we'll start focusing on the ignition switch as the cause of this no crank condition. All right, so I found a fuse for this thing. It's a 20 amp fuse, unfortunately. This thing takes a 25 amp fuse in this location, but they're a special sort of miniature type fuse. And I couldn't find one, so I'm gonna have to get one ordered. But I just put that 20 amp fuse back in there. You can see it right above that blue one. So, you know, a lower current fuse, that's not gonna cause a problem for the time being for us to test this. So we got this fuse in. Let's see if it cranks. Well, keys might help. Typically do. Let's see what happens. That's crank, that's off. That's crank, that's off. And before you say anything, yeah, I remembered to put the starter relay back in first. So we still have an issue here. Crank off, nothing, no cranky. So I got my test light here going to a known good ground. Let me see if I can get you guys up here to get a shot of this. I'm gonna touch something that'll light my test light. I think this DLC is gonna be the best thing. Just touching pin 16 of the DLC. Test light's lighting, as you can see. So getting you guys back up here. Remember, this fuse should be hot all the time. Touching that fuse, both sides, I got nothing. So that would be why we have no cranky, for sure. So let me see. It's kind of going back to the diagram to take a look. And you know, looking at this thing, let me get you guys focused on that. Just doing this aftermarket one. We see here on the control side, we come up, do this ST fuse to the ignition switch, to the AM1 fuse. That's the 25 amp that was missing, wasn't even there, so we just replaced that. If we follow that down, it gets its power from this alternator fuse, this 120 amp alternator fuse. So that pretty much needs to be our next check at this point. Looks like it's back in this box we've been working in this whole time. It's going to be a large fuse for sure. Typically these are kind of like bolted in, sort of. Let me see, I'm just trying to get you guys balanced up on the battery. And I think it's this one right here. So let's see. See if I can zoom in on that. I don't know if you can see it too well. But I'm just going to eyeball this thing. Really all you can really do with these is sort of look at them and see if they're blown or not. And it doesn't look blown to me whatsoever. You know, it definitely doesn't. Just taking a look back at our diagram here. Alt fuse, 120 amp, that is where that power comes from, and it should be there all the time. And it's definitely not there. You know, it's definitely not there. Oh, I'm just shutting this door. Just looking back on this, this is the diagram for the interior fuse block. I'm just looking to make sure we did the right one. Look right there, it says AM1. Look at our diagram. Our diagram says AM1 too. I mean, that's definitely the right fuse. So, you know, we definitely have a power feed issue in between. So I'm just taking another look at this 120 amp fuse. Usually you can tell when these things are blown, and I mean, this one just doesn't look blown. I'm not sure how hard it is to pull out. I may experiment with that a little bit. Let me find my pliers. If we're lucky, this thing will just pull right out of here. If we're unlucky, then I'm just going to destroy it. What if we're both? I know this little plastic cover's coming off. Maybe that'll be enough for us. We can at the very least take some measurements with this out of here. So looking down in there, oh dude, it's totally blown, but just barely. Hold on, let me see. Let me see if you can even see that. I'm gonna have to get you guys a super zoomed in shot. Sorry about the focus. See if some lighting will help. Terrible. Okay, that's not working. Oh my gosh. Okay, but what I'm basically looking at is I'm just looking at these contacts here, and there's just this little hairline crack going right down the middle of it. I mean, it's really tough to tell, but that thing is absolutely blown, no doubt. So here's what we'll do, just to prove that. See if I can get you guys propped back up. So just to prove that, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my test light again, and we're just going to test both sides of it. I need to grab it out of the car. Man, you guys are really getting a real look at this for this video. I'm really showing you the whole process, all the struggles. So I got my test light going to ground. When we find something hot, it should light. There we go. So I'm just going to attempt to touch both sides of this. I'm starting at the side to your right. And the test light is not lighting. I'm going to go to the one on your left. And as we can see, that one lights. Do that again, go back to this other side. No lighty. Go to the other side, lighty. So this big heavy fuse is blown. So that would be our missing power feed issue to the ignition switch. So I guess the question that kind of begs is, I wonder how the heck this happened. Typically when I see this, the vehicle wouldn't start for some reason, you know, whatever. And someone attempted to jump it off, and they reverse polarity'd it, and they blew the fuse, and then stuff like this happens. As far as the missing fuse inside of the passenger compartment, I don't really have an answer for that. My only guess would be someone was messing around and someone attempted to diagnose it, I guess. So I don't know. But really what I need to do is I need to go see if I can dig up one of these big old heavy fuses and get them put in here. So I'm gonna go look around, go on a treasure hunt for that, and well, I guess we'll see how long that takes me. So here it is. This is the 120 amp fuse. And woe to the man that blows this thing, because it is a huge nightmare to replace. For one, you can't find these very easily. Luckily, we have a junkyard that I was able to get one of these out of an older Scion. But even worse than trying to find one is having to replace it. Just to take a look at what you have to do. So pretty much you have to discombobulate the whole fuse box, because really how this works is, you know, this thing lives down there. This fuse slips in there like that, and then it's got bolts that hold these two cables in there like that. And you know, you got to kind of move the battery back and pull the air box out, and it's just a huge pain in the neck. So moral of the story is, be careful what you're doing and don't blow this freaking thing. I'm sure what probably happened with this is someone reverse polarity jump started it, and that's probably what caused this. And you know, we still don't even know if this is the original issue with the car. This might not even be the no crank condition. So I mean, you know, I think these were issues that were caused in someone attempting to troubleshoot this. So I mean, I don't know. But anyways, I'm gonna put all this stuff back together, and I'll get you back once I get it all back together, and we'll see if it starts up and runs then. So there it is, all put back together. You know, why wouldn't they make that something that you could, you know, easily replace? I don't know. Having to pull that whole box out kind of sucks. But we got it back in, so there's problem number 5,000 fixed. So we'll see if it cranks up. So we're just gonna jot on over here. We're gonna get right down to it. Oh, pretty dark in here. It's gonna make for poor video quality. All right, there's our initial key on. Everything lights up all good like, no problem there. Let's crank it. Still nothing. Still nothing. No crank. What? Okay. So it still doesn't crank, even after we got that fuse replaced. So, I mean, I'm telling you guys, ones like this are just frustrating, going back behind someone else and having to fix everything that they messed up. So anyways, now that we got this now that we got this fuse back in, let's go back to that fuse, the AM, let me see, looking on this diagram. The AM1 fuse that gets fed from this alternator fuse. And let's see if we have power there now. We should. So again, the one we're dealing with, that AM1 fuse. We didn't have power there before because this alternator fuse was blown by what I guess was someone reverse polarity jump starting it. So let's just hit this fuse up now. Let's see if we have power there, and then we can start honing in on this ignition switch. I'm almost scared to see what we find there. All right, so back up under the dash. Get you guys focused in back on that fuse we were on before. We see it's supposed to be a 25 amp. I got that 20 amp in there. Touching that with my test light, it lights. So no problem there. We got that issue fixed. Now we can start focusing on the ignition switch. So let me take a look and see sort of how I want to do that. I think what I may end up doing is just pulling this knee bolster off. Probably do that off camera for the sake of time. And we'll do some quick measurements at the switch, or at least as close to it as I can get, and we'll probably make a call. It's potentially looking like a bad ignition switch here. All right, so all I did was I just pulled this cover off of the steering wheel. And this connector right here we're looking at, someone's been playing around with this thing. It's got tape all over it, where I'm sure some aftermarket accessory has been installed in here, and yuck. But anyways, this is the ignition switch. So taking a look back at our diagram, let's see, there we go. So as far as the control sides of this go, our control side power comes in on this white wire. Follow that around to that AM1 fuse that was missing from its location earlier. So I think first step, let's hit up that white wire. And it looks like it's going to be that one right there. Let me see if I can prop this thing up to where you guys can see a little bit better. Pretty odd angle. Let me see here. Sorry for the shakiness. This is we're doing it live. How's that showing up? Pretty good, I think. So this white wire here, that's our guy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna shove this key back in the ignition switch real quick. You have to put up with that dinging, but test light's going to ground. Just touching that, make sure it lights. Holding the key in the crank position. Doesn't go out, no problem with that feed. And now as far as final checks go, you know, that needs to come out on the green wire. Goes from green to light green, and that's what's actually going to energize the starter fuse. So let's see, looks like this one here. Not that one, this one in front of this blue one right here. That green one there, that's the one that needs to feed that control side of this relay. So I'm just gonna hold that in the crank position. We'll see if this lights. And what do you know? It lights. So, you know, what does that mean? We definitely have power coming out of the ignition switch on the way back to the start fuse. So here's one thing I'm thinking about. Ever since we put that main heavy fuse back in, we haven't really went back to the relay and done any checks. Maybe that's what we should do at this point. Go back to that starter relay, or maybe the start fuse, and let's just see if we're getting power there at this point. So I think that's what we're gonna do. So let me see if I can grab my test light up from under here. Because remember, what we've done up to this point is we replaced that big heavy fuse, but we really haven't readdressed anything out here as far as that goes. So just zoom back in on the fuse block, put my test light to ground, touching battery positive, it lights. I'll show you that on one of these fuses. That one. Oh look, you know what? Our starter fuse is still gone. Wow. See, you see how one little mistake can cost you time. We went through all of this nonsense for probably no reason. I ripped that little steering column apart to test that switch for no reason because we left the starter fuse out. You know, and that's my fault, but you know, it's a good lesson on taking your time. You know, when you're dealing with problems like this, I guess when you're dealing with something like this where someone has had their fingers all over the place already, you start to get frustrated. I know I do. I'm pretty mad at this car right now, having to go back behind this person and kind of unscrew everything at this point. So anyways, you know, that was a minor mistake by my part. You know, cost me about 5 minutes of time having to pull that steering column trim off to do some testing on the ignition switch. So let's just jump back in here and let's see if it starts now. It probably will, seeing as how this ignition switch is good. You know, we did kind of just test it. A little bit of lost time, no big deal. So let's see what happens here. Hey, it's like magic. It's like magic. She starts and runs. Isn't that awesome? Let's see how she revs. I bet you this thing's got horsepower for days now. It does have a check engine light on. I'm not sure what's up with that. Oh, and it doesn't rev. That's good. And it still doesn't come out of park. So we still have all that to worry about too. Man. Not sure how long this video is at this point either. I don't know if I can cram that in here. Let me think about it for a little bit. All right, so I thought about it. We're gonna see if we can tackle these other issues as fast as we can. The vehicle doesn't rev. It also doesn't come out of park. So I'm just gonna do a quick code scan here. Probably gonna be a little less detailed from this point on because I'm gonna try to be quick with this, but I'm going to tell you guys as much as I possibly can. Man, this Scion is really turning into a basket case. You know, it's the whole original problem it had for coming in here was a no crank, and I really feel like, you know, all of these other issues are potentially caused by problems, you know, the owner's done to this thing or whoever's done to this thing. So I just did a code scan. I didn't see anything. Let me jump back in here and start it back up. So we got it running now. We got a good idle kick up. So that tells me the throttle can move. Check engine light's definitely on. Accelerator pedal all the way to the floor. Nothing happens whatsoever. So what's up with that, you know? It's kind of weird that our code scan didn't show us anything. Let's try that again. Key was off when we tried that, so let's see what this thing shows us. Yeah, it can be a real nightmare dealing with basket case cars like this. So this is saying no codes in memory on the auto code scan. There's no way that's true. I mean, we have a check engine light on the dash. Current codes, no codes present. History codes, no codes present. Let's try pending codes. No codes present. Are you serious? So the vehicle doesn't rev. We have no codes. Should I try again with just the key on? Take the key back out of the ignition. Let me wait for 10 seconds. Turn the key back on. I don't have anything else disconnected, so you know, this is really just something else going on with this thing, I'm fairly certain. Do another full system code scan. Oh Oh man, it's incredibly frustrating dealing with cars like this sometimes. Luckily, it's not too often that I get, you know, just a whacked up car like this where someone's had their little hands digging around and stuff beforehand. You know, typically the vehicles, look, and now we have engine codes. Maybe there's some two-trip detection stuff going on there. So we got a P2118 throttle actuator control motor current range performance. Looks like we see that in multiple locations. I don't really see anything pertaining to it not coming out of park. That may be some sort of brake switch issue. Let's just go to the troubleshooter on this one. P2118. Troubleshooter, code tips, P2118. The electronic throttle control system has a dedicated power supply circuit. When a monitored voltage is low, less than 4 volts, the ECM determines there's a malfunction in the electronic throttle control system, then cuts off the current to the throttle actuator. Man! Based off of all the things we've seen on this car so far, what you want to bet we have a fuse missing or a fuse blown somewhere? Let me get a diagram. All right, so to make this quick, I just printed out some code set conditions for this P2118 throttle actuator code. And really I'm focused more on the setting conditions here, and it gave me a good piece of info. Engine running, the ECM detected an unexpected low voltage condition due to an open circuit on the ETCS power source circuit. Battery positive voltage is applied to the plus BM circuit of the ECM. So that was really what I wanted to know is, you know, where was this fault code coming from? What terminal was being monitored? So all I did at that point was I pulled a wiring diagram, easy peasy, and I found that pin, plus BM right here. It is a brown wire. We could follow that off the page, and quite simply, it comes off the page here on pin number 2 and then up to this fuse, ETCS fuse. It's a 10 amp fuse, and it's in that same box we've been working in. So we're just gonna go check it. Get you guys set up here for the umpteenth time today. Checking my test light. Hopefully you guys can see if it lights or not. Let me find one here. There we go, that should be good. So I'm just looking for that box. And we're looking for the ETCS fuse. Let me make sure the key is on, and it is. Which this fuse is hot at all times according to that diagram, so that doesn't really matter. So just looking on here, and it looks like this one right there is my guy, ETCS. So let me see, I'm gonna get my bearings on this thing real quick. So 120 amp fuse is down there. Follow that up, it's gonna be a 10 amp fuse. To the right of that, it's gonna be a 30 amp fuse, and I see it. So this is our fuse right here. So I'm just checking both sides of this. No power on that side, and we have power on that side. What do you know? Blown fuse. Where's my pliers? La-da-da. I mean, really, guys, this had to have been reverse polarity jump started. I mean, there's no other possibility in my mind. It had to have been. Look, there's a fuse here that doesn't even belong here. You can tell because it's a bigger size. So a little 10 amp, one of these wacky mini fuses. Let me find a fuse for this thing and I'll be right back. So this is the fuse I pulled out, guys. It's this weird kind of funky style. This is the one I'm gonna put back in temporarily. And you know, we're gonna need to replace these for sure. There's a few of them over here that have been replaced with these bigger style fuses. I don't know, that just doesn't sit quite right with me. They'll probably work fine. But we got that fuse in there now. So let's jump back in and let's see if we can start it and rev it. It'd be cool if it was tied into not being able to get this thing out of park too. I don't know, maybe it will be. All right, so she's running. I'm just gonna give it some gas. Still no response from the accelerator pedal. I'm gonna shut this back off. Turn that back on. We may need to clear this fault code. That is a very real possibility. Let's also make sure that this fuse did not blow. So So I'm just touching one side of that. That side's good. That side's good. So it definitely didn't blow. Let's clear the fault codes. I think there's, you know, the definite potential that a fault coded memory could be preventing this from working. So just going back to the scan tool, getting back out of the troubleshooter, click clear codes, yes, okay. Reread them, current code's nothing, pending code's nothing, all right. Hopping back in here, we'll cycle the key off. You'll have to forgive the dinging. Cycle it back on, start it up. No check engine light, that's good. Just put my foot on the accelerator pedal, let's see if it revs. Yay! We fixed it. Let's see if it comes out of park now. Nope, still doesn't come out of park. Man, this video is getting long. I don't really know. I don't really know if I'm gonna have the time to do that one too. You know what, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look at a diagram real quick, see how involved it is. If it's something that's not too bad, I'll bring you guys along. If it is something that's gonna be sort of time consuming, then I'll let you know and we'll cut this video. And I'm probably not gonna film that one. It's probably gonna be a pretty simple issue. Probably gonna be something frustratingly boring, like some of the stuff we've been dealing with on this basket case so far. So let me take a quick look and see sort of what that looks like, feel it out a little bit. All right, we'll go all the way with it. So all I have here is a diagram of the shift interlock system, and immediately, based on the issues we've had with this vehicle so far, my focus is going to be on the power feeds. And really, there's only two that we need to be concerned about. We have one here that's hot and on or start. Well, I guess we need to be focused on that one too, huh? So we have this ECU IG fuse, we have this accessory fuse, and we have this stop fuse here. All of them are going to be in that box under the knee bolster we've been working at before. So as far as what I want to do first, I just want to eyeball and make sure they're still here. Taking a look at this cover, I'm just going to highlight these to make it real easy for me. So we're looking for the stop fuse. Accessory fuse is this one. It's a pretty bad highlighting job, huh? Let me see, ECU IG fuse, worried about that one. And stop fuse. So it's like this one, and this one. The ones I kind of smeared highlighter on very terribly like. So let's just go eyeball those real quick. And let's see if they're actually in the car. Something tells me, I don't know what, but something tells me they're not going to be there. All right, so let's see here. Getting back under here. So 9 amp fuse, or excuse me, fuse number 9, that's going to be the stop fuse. So that would be right there, and it's not there, of course. So that makes sense. Okay. Taking a look back on here, that should be a 10 amp. So let me find a 10 amp fuse and get that put in there. I may have one rattling around my junk drawer here. Toolbox tour, how about it, huh? This is my drawer of junk. And there's some junk in this trunk, I'll tell you what. But I got a 10 amp fuse and my battery on my camera's dying, so we're gonna need to skedaddle on this. Again, this isn't the exact same style fuse, don't worry. I'm gonna go back and get them all replaced with the proper kinds. So, just shoving this in its spot there, boom, just like that. Okay. And here we go. It cranks. It revs. And it moves from park. Wouldn't you know it? Isn't that just beautiful? So, when you're talking about issues like this, man, they could be a huge pain. I mean, a huge pain. Someone was in here messing around with this car. I have no idea what they were doing. What was the original issue even? We had 2 fuses missing, one huge 120 amp fuse that was blown. How do you blow that? But I'm definitely suspicious that we have another issue with this car. There's some sort of crazy wacky story with this thing. But as far as the original complaint, no crank, all that good stuff, all that stuff's fixed. We took care of all of that. So that's going to be it for this video. I'm not sure what you guys can take away from this one other than some basic voltage measurement testing techniques and stuff like that. It was more of just sort of a video log to show you some of the stuff that I deal with. This is a real freaking basket case here. So anyways, guys, I'm over 400 subscribers now, and that's really, really awesome. You know, I can't believe the success that I've had, and it's all thanks to you guys. It really is. You know, without you guys watching, I don't think I'd still be making these videos. But you know, every day I wake up and I think about, you know, what can I film, what can I bring to you guys to, you know, for your entertainment. So, anyways, that was another episode, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Hope you found it as comical as I did. I was getting pretty frustrated. Maybe that was comical in and of itself. So, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.